So let me just start with deep, deep gratitude. This congregation supported me through 6 months of rest and renewal and personal growth. It was incredible, and it is so good to be back. And that said, I've been advised that it takes a while to reacclimate to one another after a sabbatical. After 6 months on separate journeys, I'm different, you're different, and the process of coming back together and getting to know each other can take as long as it needs to, but at the least it'll be my focus for the month of August. In the 3 Sunday services I'll share different perspectives on the ways I have changed, the things I've learned. And the bulk of my time during the week will be getting caught up on how things have changed here at church and in your individual lives. The 6 months went by pretty quickly for me, actually. From the day I started planning my sabbatical, I let my intuition take the lead. I'd always dreamed of visiting Greece, so I decided to spend 3 weeks in Greece in the spring. I longed to see the Grand Canyon, so I added a 6-week solo camping trip on the schedule and traveled around the Colorado Plateau. I love hot springs, so I marked all of the hot springs on my atlas. In between and before and after, I visited friends and family, beautiful people in beautiful places. And each day, I got up in the morning and I asked myself, "Self, what do you want to do today?" And then I did it. It was amazing. Almost every day, myself wanted to play outside. There's a deep soul healing that happens for me when I drink in natural beauty. And this is one of the many gifts I received on sabbatical. From watching the snow on the cedars on the Olympic Peninsula to being able to witness the desert super bloom. The most amazing was in Joshua Tree, to the awe-inspiring rock formations in southern Utah. I found, like Mary Oliver, that every single day, I saw something that almost killed me with delight. Cool, clean rivers of such a deep turquoise blue, it almost seemed like they were on another planet. The sun sinking into the Pacific Ocean, wildflowers, wild animals, the starry sky at night out beyond civilization where everything, the stars look thick and crowded, kind of like a fleece blanket, like there's a 3-dimensional, and the colors of the Milky Way are visible. Now, in my regular non-sabbatical life, I get out in nature most days, but it's most often a quick walk on which I'm running through my to-do list or trying to figure out how I'm going to respond to that email whilst keeping an eye on my dogs. On sabbatical, though, I walked for hours without seeing another person, and the constant stream of thoughts slowed to a trickle, and then it stopped, allowing me to be fully present. And in that state, the world spoke to me, the plants and the animals, the rocks and the water, the light and the air. Some of what the world said I attempted to capture in the poems I wrote at the end of each day. Some of it was beyond words. The poems are another gift. The story goes like this. I was talking to my therapist, pointing out that as I left on sabbatical, I was leaving much of my identity behind. Who am I asked, if I'm not a minister, a wife, a mother. That's a good question, she replied. Who do you think you are? I took a few deep breaths, asking Spirit to answer for me, and out popped a poet. And thus was born my sabbatical practice of writing a poem every day. I told myself they didn't have to be any good. A lot of them weren't. Quantity, not quality. So, most of them are not great, but as I read back through my notebook and a half, 180 is actually quite a lot of poems. So I read back through my notebook and a half of poems, and there are a couple. There are a couple that take my breath away, and I don't remember writing them. I tried to let my daily poem be not me writing, but something coming through me. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this collection of poems. I think the first step is to type them into the computer and then choose the ones that are worth working on some more and editing. Maybe I'll eventually try publishing some of them, or maybe not. The act of writing them, the creative act, had and has value in and of itself. Like time spent being, not doing in nature, writing poetry opened channels for deep soul healing. I could take those poems and put them in a drawer and never look at them again, and they would still be a powerful gift. So thank you for them as well. Through these two practices, being in nature and writing poetry, I was able to process a lot of trauma and grief on this sabbatical, and I really needed that. I still hold the losses and the stories, but I'm holding them more lightly. And I find that as a result, there's more space in me for joy and delight and laughter and fun. It feels good and right, like I've come back into balance. While my spirit was healing and becoming more resilient through nature and creativity, my body was becoming stronger and more resilient as well. Most of you know that I was diagnosed with lupus back in 2010, and in my body, that disease looks like fatigue, sun sensitivity, and a lot of joint pain. It's been fairly well controlled for years now, but there was a part of me at the ripe old age of 47 that before sabbatical felt as though I was already on a long, slow physical decline. Then, one day, when I was out for what was supposed to be a reasonable 5-mile hike, I took a wrong turn, got lost in the desert, and wound up walking 8.5 miles instead. And at the end of the day, I expected that my body would revolt, that my knees and hips and feet and back would hurt, and they didn't. And that got me curious. So I started pushing my limits. If I could hike 8.5 miles, maybe I could do 9, maybe 10. If I could do 10, maybe 12 was okay. The more I hiked, the stronger my legs got, and the better my joints felt. By the time I started on my big camping trip, I was hiking between 12 and 15 miles a day, every day, and feeling none the worse for wear. And I can't tell you how amazing it is at this stage of the game to realize that I'm not fighting a long, slow slide, but rather I'm still capable of building strength and endurance. So thank you. I never would have been able to make this discovery if I hadn't had sabbatical. Also, I'm hoping not to lose these new muscles, so talk to me after the service if you're interested in a weekend hiking club. I received huge heart gifts over the last 6 months as well. In addition to reconnecting with friends and family, I made new connections with people in all kinds of contexts, in all walks of life. I visited the women's prison in Coffee Creek, Oregon, and met a circle of women who have experienced and done horrible things. It was my colleague Emily's Lifers group. And it was amazing because you're sitting in this room and you know that they've done something that's caused them to be put in jail for the rest of their lives. And they were beautiful. And they had a beautiful sense of community. They took care of themselves and looked out for each other just the way we do. It was an honor to be present with them. On my trip to Greece, I met all kinds of locals who were patient enough to decipher my fumbling attempts to speak Greek, or otherwise good enough at speaking English that I could really get to know them. I came to appreciate Greek history, religion, and culture. I'll talk more about that later. And interestingly enough, it was when I was traveling overseas that I made a couple of new friends who I'll be staying in touch with. There's a young French horn player from Seattle, the age of my kids, with whom I explored a hidden cave church. We're still in touch. There was a woman from Barcelona whose son wants to come to the US to go to engineering school, so we're still in touch, and I'll be helping her arrange her travels. There's also this guy I met in Greece who was a year behind me in college. We actually were in the same residential college. We had a lot of friends in common, teachers in common, but we don't think we'd actually met before. However, he's a great guy, and we have a lot in common, and we had a fun day of adventures together and are still in touch. I even talked him into hiking up to a cave and going he said, "This is way farther than I would have gone if I hadn't been with you." Back stateside, because I was a little nervous about camping by myself, I did some research. I read some articles and blogs on how to be safe as a woman camping alone. And one of the recommendations was, make sure you get to know your fellow campers and the campground hosts. So that's what I did. And they were great people. They were great people. Campers, I think, are just good people. From the guy at the Grand Canyon who insisted I keep the roll of paper towels that I borrowed, to the Mormon family who helped me figure out how to set up my pop-up shelter for the first time, to the husband and wife who got out there. I camped in my car and I had this tiny little tent, right? And this couple had this gigantic motorhome with a toy hauler out back and a couple of SUVs and dirt bikes and motorboats. And luckily this gigantic toolkit, because my tent stakes got stuck in the hard pack, and my little mallet with the hook on the end that I used to put I broke it. And because the ground was so hard, and so he had this huge toolkit and pulled out all of my stakes and put me in a good place, and so that I could be on my way. Ruined all my stakes, but that's enough. One of the other lessons that I learned that has nothing to do with church is essentially always buy tent stakes. Every stop, more tent stakes. There was this one guy from British Columbia who actually got really upset with me one day. I didn't tell him my plans, and I was camping in Moab. I wanted to see Canyonlands, and if you've ever been to Canyonlands, it's got sort of three parts. There are two parts up north, Dead Horse Canyon and Island in the Sky, and then down south, there's the Needles. And I had been talking to people for a couple of days, which should I go to, and I couldn't decide, so I decided to do both. I got up really early, went north, then had lunch, and then went south in the late afternoon and evening, so I was gone from before 7 until after 8. And the minute I pulled into the campsite, this guy from British Columbia comes marching over. He's like, "Where have you been? We didn't know where you were. I was about to call the police and send them out looking for you." It was so sweet. Everywhere I went, people were remarkably kind. One of the scarier experiences I had was when I was in Greece. Actually, on the day I hiked to the cave church with the horn player, I was experimenting with fasting, and I didn't really have enough water with me either. And he and I hiked a total of 12.5 miles, and then got on a bus to go back to the main town. So there I am, hungry, dehydrated, on windy Greek roads. I tend to get motion sickness. On this bus, I was standing up, I didn't have a seat, and they just kept loading more and more people, and it was getting more and more crowded. I started to feel woozy, and I looked at my hiking buddy, and I said, "I think I'm going to pass out." And then I did. Most of the people on that bus didn't speak English. They didn't know me from a hole in the wall. Yet they gave me water and food. They mopped my face. They gave up their seats. No one got cranky at the delay. No one expressed anything but concern. I guess I was sheet white and my lips were gray, and this is what dehydration looks like. There's this one woman from France, doesn't speak any English at all, but she wanted to get my feet above my head. I think she was a nurse or a doctor. And so she just lifted up my stinky, hiked 12 miles through fields with lots of goat poop feet and held them above my head so that, who does that? For someone they've never met before, whose language they don't even speak. There was a family from Singapore who walked me all the way back to my hotel room because they wanted to make sure I was all right. It's easy, I think, for us to think of the world as a hostile place and to think of people as being mean or callous. But my experiences taught me that when you come right down to it, we humans, we look out for each other. That was a gift. It was a huge gift for me to learn that. So, thank you. There were two questions that I held especially tenderly while I was away. The first was, how do I stay connected with my own spirit, with my intuition? Can I be as compassionate toward myself as I am toward everyone else? Can I name and advocate as fiercely for my own needs as I do for the needs of everyone around me? And one of the things a minister does is prioritize the needs of the congregation and of individual members of the community over their own. Parents do that with their children as well, and it's right and proper. But after 20 years as a minister and a mom, I'd lost hold of the thread that connected me to my own needs, or rather, I'd gotten so used to putting others first that it felt selfish to me when I tried to take care of myself. And that's shifted in the last 6 months, at least a little. I don't yet know how it's going to play out as I step back into my role and my work. Though it seems outrageous to ask for more when you've already given me so much, I'd like to ask you to support me in continuing to hold this question. The second question is related. What does the congregation need from me going forward, and what does the world need from me? And what does the world need from the congregation? One of the smartest things I did was to unplug from the 24-hour news cycle. For 6 months, I just let go. And I trusted that you all would get along fine without me, and so would the world. I didn't completely shut out all of reality. They're babies in cages. There's signs of climate change are everywhere. You do hear about the shootings and the Mueller report and, these other developments. And so the fact that we're in for a rocky few decades is never far from my mind, was never far from my mind. Although, the trip on the Colorado Plateau was really helpful as far as that goes for two reasons. First of all, you're seeing these layers of rocks that are millions of years old. And so there's a sense of perspective that comes from that. That, the Earth's going to be around one way or the other. And there are a ton of archaeological sites there, ancestral Puebloan archaeological sites. And they uprooted their civilization and evolved because of not anthropogenic climate change, but because of climate change. And the culture and the history and the stories and the roots are still there. So those two things together kind of brought me a sense of not acceptance, but peace and faith that, we'll find our way through. We'll find our way through. That said, I'm holding this question, what's needed from us? And the answer that kept coming round as I held that question is that actually the key to surviving and to doing my part to help the world actually lives in the gifts so beautifully presented to me over these last 6 months. The world needs me to seek out that peace found in nature, the peace of wild things. The world needs me to heal through creativity. It needs me strong and healthy. It needs me to connect and reconnect, to love indiscriminately and trust in the goodness of other people. It needs me to remember that I am a human being, not a human doing. These are the practices that will enable me to serve the good for the long haul, even in the midst of the mess. I've come to understand on a visceral level the importance of rest, play, and other practices that ground and renew and restore. It's not just the work, it's not that the work we do isn't important, more it's that we do it better when we're grounded and strong and centered and able to hold things lightly, when we act with integrity and balance. Now, I know that not everyone has the incredible luxury of a months-long sabbatical, though everyone should. Everyone needs a sabbatical. But I'm thinking about how to incorporate what I've learned into my ministry. How can I support this community by offering more opportunities to stop doing and just be? Because the world needs you to seek out the peace found in nature. It needs you to heal through creativity. It needs you as strong and as healthy as you're able to be. It needs you to connect and reconnect, to love indiscriminately. It needs you to remember that you are a human being, not a human doing. These are the practices that will enable us all to serve the good for the long haul, even in the midst of the mess. I want you to know that I missed you more than words can say. And also, I love you more than words can say. You are so beautiful and so blessed and so good, and I am so very, very glad to be home. Blessed be.